Arthanomics was one of the best experiences during my undergrad. And I strongly recommend anyone watching this video to participate, especially since it's online this time, and just take the fest ahead. And I mean, Endeavour sounds like a great, great endeavor. So keep it up. Sorry for the dad jokes.
So Maithili, tell us about yourself and your journey through Jai Hind College.
I think one of the main things that I realized in my time during undergrad is that a key difference between any other undergraduate study and ours is that we do have a lot more time on our hands apart from what the syllabus demands of us. So I think the key is to maximize that time and be productive and not while away the excess time that you do get. So my first year was pretty much me just exploring everything the college had to offer to find my footing. A big thing for me was just reading. I read a lot of econ related books, a lot of research papers. I mean, however much of it I may understand, I may not understand everything at that point. I may not have understood everything at that point. But just literally consuming as much knowledge as you can outside of those like tiny little textbooks that we're given at Jai Hind, because that is just not knowledge enough. Yeah. So my recommendation to anyone would be to be open to new experiences, to be open to consumption of as much knowledge as comes your way, and enjoy the ride and just take it as it comes.
So could you tell us something about the stuff that you've been reading, or how has reading in the field of economics actually helped you in the academic life as well?
Definitely. So I think it was a good transition for me. During my undergrad study, I mainly read like econ related novels, which are not research heavy and they are worded very well. So it helps someone understand the language of economic analysis. So one of my favorite books is Fault Lines by Raghuram Rajan.
Yeah.
And I mean, up until then, at least I knew what the financial crisis was about and kind of had a fair understanding of it. But after reading that book, I got like an in-depth economist perspective without all the jargon around it. So that would be one recommendation. Another one is An Economist in the Real World, which is written by our Chief Economic Advisor of the Government of India.
Yes.
A great insight into understanding what the role of an economist is in any form of government. And I would suggest you start with like novels, which are easy to consume, and then go on to like more difficult to read research papers, and kind of at that level then abandon novels, because then somewhere like that gets a little too easy to read kind of
thing. Okay. So could you just tell a little about like how helpful has writing research papers or knowing about research papers helped you in right now in your present career?
Definitely. I mean, research is a painstaking process. It teaches you so much about perseverance, sticking with one topic until you reach like the absolute bottom of it, until you're able to answer every question, being innovative in ways to find ways to answer the question at hand. So I think research by itself teaches you a lot of life lessons, which people don't realize often, because it like really teaches you to be patient with your work, to be creative in a sense, and to really know everything about something. And I think that is like very, very important. That process of research can help in any realm of work, of life, whether or not you continue to be an economist. So I think that is my key takeaway from writing research papers.
How do you think your career was going to pan out as an undergraduate student? Was LSE always the goal? Or like, could you just walk us through the entire decision-making process or the application process that just what you thought of when you were applying for your master's?
Definitely. I mean, it was my plan from the kind of 11th grade to go abroad for my master's. To go to LSE particularly was my first option if I would get in. So that was kind of the plan, which is why I kind of chose my subjects even at undergrad in that way. I took math, I took econ majors because I knew I needed those things to get into university for my master's. I also kind of plan my time in a way that I am constantly involved with the subject. I took a lot of online courses on this side. I took econometrics classes because we don't get taught that at the undergrad level. I took more advanced math modules online, just anything that would like help me both from an application point of view as well as from a learning point of view, because that was my plan. I understand that a lot of people kind of don't have a plan from the outside, which is not a drawback, but just try to kind of cover as much ground as possible whenever you can. So yeah, as for me, it was always more about the study. I knew I wanted to do a master's in economics. I was not as aware, to be honest, of the career opportunities either after or before. And even today, I think when I think about a job or work as such, that's not what excites me more. What excites me is the research prospect, which is why even now, like, I am still considering studying more as opposed to just going head on into work. Because I don't know, that's a very personal preference. I don't really, I mean, work doesn't excite me as much as research. If there's research in my work, then I'm like, okay, I'm on board.
Yeah.
I think the best role for an economist today is in any form of government or central bank. After that, investment banks surprisingly have economists, like they have a team of 3 to 4 economists, and they actually are very, very, very well respected, and they do a lot of good work. So for instance, investment banks always have so much exposure, right, to the foreign exchange market, to global markets, to taxation, to like all these different pieces. So they hire economists who run these models and constantly try to curb the risks to that investment bank. So that's one of the most coveted positions today. It's one of the most well-paying economist positions out there in the corporate world. Other than that, of course, these large multinational companies like Aditya Birla and its likes, like Hindustan Unilever, they have economist positions, commercial banks. And I think that now tech companies are hiring economists. So IBM, Google, Amazon, Apple, they all have a chief economist and a team of about 3 or 4 other economists, because now they are like the ones developing markets. They are the ones beating regulation, and they really need an economist to like kind of maneuver their way through all kinds of markets. So it's very interesting. It's a very, very interesting time for economists today. And I am excited to see what work draws me.
So could you you mentioned about Aditya Birla, and you have worked over there also. So could you tell us about your professional journey and what did these roles entail, even at the Gateway House?
Okay, I'll start with Gateway House first because it's relatively shorter. Gateway House is a think tank, and now every think tank kind of focuses on a different area. Gateway House particularly focuses on geo-economics and international relations and global politics. So I would say someone who's more into politics and international relations is fitted for that kind of a role. It does not involve a lot of data. It just involves a lot of analysis of world events. So if something is happening, it's up to you to kind of weave out a story related to past events and understand any patterns, understand diplomacy, understanding diplomatic routes, and how that affects our country, how it affects the businesses in our country. So that's kind of what I did at Gateway House. I was just an intern over there for 3 months, so I wouldn't say the experience was very substantial, but it kind of gave me an insight into how think tanks work. My biggest issue with working at a think tank is that it's not rewarding, because you're doing all this research, but it's so uncertain about where that research leads up to. You know, like you just publish it somewhere. You publish it either in a journal or on your website, but are you really affecting policy today? Is it really reaching the government? I mean, out of like 30 papers would actually reach the government. So I think that's a big drawback for anyone considering working in a think tank. Of course, like something like a government funded think tank like Niti Aayog is very different, because they're constantly working hand in hand with the government. So it's much better in that sense, in like the rewarding sense of things. But yeah, that was about Gateway House. And I realized soon enough that, I don't want to specialize in international relations. I want to be more on the eco side of things, which is why I kind of progressed from there to Aditya Birla. Over there, it was great learning. It was a team of like 10 macroeconomists headed by Dr. Ajit Ranade, who's one of the best macroeconomists in our country today.
Wow.
And a big chunk of the work, at least at my junior level, was kind of tracking a lot of data, macro data for a lot of countries where the group had business interests. So they have like the Aditya Birla group has a lot of businesses which are present in a lot of countries, and as a result of which the political environment, the economic environment, the GDP, inflation, price levels, regulation, all those parameters affect the business. So as the team of economists, our job was to constantly track all this data, update the business owners on what is happening on the data front, what is happening on the policy front, and how it is affecting your business, so accordingly they can take decisions. So that was kind of the day-to-day task. Another major role that I was part of, luckily during my tenure there, was forecasting a bunch of variables which go into like the planning and budgeting process for the next financial year for all the businesses. So you build like statistical models which forecast GDP, inflation, exchange rates, different stock indices and stuff like that for the group's businesses across a set of like 10 countries. And then those estimates go into the budget decisions for the businesses for the next fiscal year. So I think that was a very, very rewarding process. That was very interesting, very, very detailed and rigorous. And that's what really kind of showed me this like tiny peep into the data world and building empirical models and what value that brings to an economist's career.
What would you advise students such as Samiksha and me, if we want to actually learn the applications of the theories that we learn in class? Because I'm sure that even when we go abroad for studies, there is a gap there somewhere. And even when you start your professional career, you really want to think back and, you try to connect the dots with the application and theory. So how does that happen?
I would suggest reading the paper, particularly Mint and ET for economist students. Also, the Economist magazine. Try to I know the subscription is a little expensive, even the e-subscription, but try to get like a hack around it. Basically, try to either access at least the free articles or whatever. So I think that really fills a huge gap between learning and practice, because you're reading the stuff that's happening in real time and written by economists on the field, policymakers in the field, and different business owners in the field, and what they think of the economics that we study. So I think reading the paper is highly underrated, and it should be done on a regular basis. And to be honest, initially you may not understand stuff. Even I've been through that process. Like initially there are these very typical journalistic terms which we don't understand. But when you start reading it over and over again, you start making sense of it. Like you understand the language, you understand what they're kind of hinting at. So stick with it would be my advice. Another thing would be that all these research hubs in the country currently have like these free research reports that they email to you if you subscribe to them online. So ICICI Bank's Treasury Research, National Stock Exchange's Macro Research, all these think tanks have their like weekly updates. So if you just literally go onto their website and subscribe to their like weekly updates, they send you like in short stuff of what's happening.
So could you tell us your journey at LSE, and how was the culture around over there, and how are your academics and extracurricular?
Okay, let's walk you through my journey. It was a 2-year program. The first year is kind of a foundation year where you do undergrad level courses still, which I highly recommend anyone going for a master's, especially from India, to do a 2-year degree. Like whatever you go for, econ, finance, literally whatever you go for, do a 2-year degree, because you need that much time to get into the new system, to get into the new mind frame. So the first year, honestly, initially is very intimidating because your peers are so intelligent. Everyone seems like they know everything. Everyone seems like they're on top of things. Your professors are like these celebrity economists who you've just read about and read their research, and suddenly they're in the same room as you. And it's honestly initially very, very daunting. But luckily, LSE knows that this is an issue. So they kind of tell you that in so many words, in all the emails and all the videos that they send you even before you apply, as well as the first week is kind of like a welcome week where they inaugurate you and they tell you of what is in store. So they kind of scare you, but that's good because then you're prepared of what is kind of lying in front of you. So that was the first couple of months, but once you settle in, you make friends, it gets really, really easy and it gets amazing. Honestly, the MSc is no joke. You study 7 days a week, 10 hours a day for 2 years, like not a single day off. You get no time off. And if you even breathe for like half a second to yourself, you're behind by a week. Mm-hmm. So it's very intense. The process is that they have lectures where there are these big lecture theaters of 100, 150 people, and there's one professor lecturing. And that's where you kind of learn the main content every week. And after that, you're split into classes of about 15 to 20 students. And those classes are taken by teaching assistants, which are usually like final year PhD students or recently inaugurated fellows or researchers. So they're usually like junior people who you can relate to, who very recently done their MSc. And so if for a particular subject, my lecture is this week, the class is next week. And between this week and next week, you have to finish a large assignment every single week. That assignment is typically math, like in all subjects, it's always just math in econ at the master's level. They're called problem sets. So you kind of first solve the problem set, then you can probably discuss it with your friends, then you attend class, then you realize that half of it is wrong, and then you go back, look at the solution and redo it. I mean, it's a learning process. You initially get half of it wrong, you eventually get everything right. So I think just that level of rigor is what we are not used to. But it's amazing from the learning point of view, because how we study for an exam, you're studying that way every week, essentially. Because you have to study whatever's taught that week and do an assignment on it, which is as difficult as an exam, even if it's open book. So that is kind of the learning process. The first year was a lot harder for me than the second year, because it was kind of getting in that mind frame of thinking about things in the form of equations, thinking about economic models that we've not done before, thinking about stats like in daily, literally daily language. Like people would just talk, like your daily words would be in statistical terms and mathematical terms, and we're not kind of used to that. But having said that, anyone can do it. Like if you have time, and if you kind of spend time with your material, then it makes sense. And once it makes sense, it's like, wow, this is amazing. Like, what was I missing out? I wish I knew this before. But of course, like anyone can do it. Honestly, if you spend enough time with stuff, you can really achieve anything. So that was kind of the academics. The second year, while the syllabus was a lot harder, because the second year is your actual MSc, you're used to the system, you know your professors, you know your students, you're in the safe space. So that is, so it's much easier in the second year in that sense. Secondly, I think the Econ department at LSE is like one of the best departments in the world. I mean, of course, academically, but in the sense of involving their students. So we like whatever issue or recommendation we would ever take to the department. So they were like the administrative people of the department. They would always implement it immediately, whatever you said. And I think that just makes you feel like you belong somewhere. That is like that your voice is actually heard. And I think that's very rare. You don't see that often. Usually it gets caught up in bureaucracy and paperwork and whatnot. But here it was just so simple. I mean, our study room was on the same floor as the department, an administrative department. And if we ever had an issue, we would literally just walk up to them and tell them, listen, this is an issue, and they would actually act on it within the same day. So I think that really makes you feel like you're part of this community. And they were like always organizing social events for us because they knew how overworked we were, and involving us, getting us like treats in the study room. Like they would always give us like coffee and donuts and snacks and water and whatever we needed, kind of take care of us like we're the children, which was really, really nice. Other than that, I think I got very lucky with my set of friends. The 2-year program is a smaller cohort. We were 40 of us, and I think all 40 of us were very close, and they were kind of like my backbone throughout the 2 years. I could not have done it without them. Because everyone's in it together, right? Like you study together, you're struggling together, you're stressed out together, you have breakdowns and you're there for each other. So it's really important to like have that around you. So anyone who goes, please invest in time to make friends, especially in the first few months, because that is what will like let you sail through. I think another big thing that I did not see coming was that people were very helpful. I thought maybe people would be very competitive and not really share stuff, not be helpful, but that was honestly so far from it, because everyone was so helpful. They'd go out of their way to help you, even like not just academics, but like even job opportunities and stuff. You would think they're so competitive, but people would actually post any job opening they would see, or like motivate their fellow students to like apply and stuff. So I think that really like we're like, okay, this is fine. Like we are all in this together. Being in like the safe environment makes all the difference. As for extracurriculars, honestly, there's not much time, but people do it, and I did a few extracurriculars. In the first year, I was part of like, I tried to play a little football with the team, but the cold didn't really suit me, so I didn't go ahead with it. But people could do that. Like I could have removed time for that every weekend to kind of be part of the football team. Other than that, I ensured that I was part of like academic extracurriculars. So I was part of the Econ Society's research paper writing team in the first year, and we wrote a research paper and published it in the student journal. In the second year, I was an editor for the student paper then. So I think that much is possible. Other than that, a lot of people usually do like a part-time research assistantship with a professor or a research institute affiliated with LSE. So I did that as well for like 6 months in my second year. So that really shows you, like it like shows you the kind of research that's happening, and what you're learning is suddenly being implemented into research in real time. And that was a great learning. It's a little hectic then, as a result of which you have no weekends, because then you're doing like the research work over the weekend, but it's worth it because that's part of like the MSc in that sense.
Maithili, you also worked at Deloitte in the UK, right? So how did that pan off? Like, how did that work for you? What did the job role entail?
Definitely. I think econ consulting is something we don't still have in India. It's not like a practice of any of the big four consulting or the accounting firms today, which is very interesting to me because I didn't even know such a role existed. And then I go there and, oh, econ consulting is like all the rave. Basically, what they do is, so a big part of it is regulatory work. So everything around oligopolistic markets and the regulation around it. So you both help the players in the market maneuver around regulation and ensure that they're meeting all these oligopolistic regulation requirements. But a big part of it is working with the government to actually formulate regulatory policy. So you're kind of analyzing markets like oligopolistic markets, you're dealing with market level data and understanding if there's enough competition, if there's price collusion, if there's quantity collusion, are the players in the market acting fairly, who the main players are, what is the regulation we need to ensure that there is fair competition, what are the pros and cons of a certain regulatory act, how much to tax, how much to subsidize. So regulation is a big part of an econ consultant's job. Another part of it is also kind of devising socio-economic policies for governments, and then analyzing the policy. So first you design the policy and then you track it over like 5 years to collect data and analyze how that policy actually panned out, which is one of the projects I did during my time there, which was very interesting to do because you're not only making a policy, but then you're actually seeing it through to the end. You're collecting data. So you tell the government that I want these 10 indicators, and then I'll be able to tell you what the effect of this policy was. A lot of other stuff is like you do stress tests for the banking sector. So you see what kind of risk exposure they have, how do we curb it, how much foreign exchange should they hedge, how many risky investments they have, how much capital do they need to fund those risky investments, stuff like that. So stress testing is a very technical area again, and only 2-3 people in the team did it. So that's another part of it. Other than that, any other consultancy services that a firm needs from an economist point of view. So if there's like currently in COVID, econ consulting is really booming because everyone's like, oh, what is going to happen to the markets? Which markets should I invest in? What should I do to ensure that my growth rate doesn't stifle in the next year? That's when you hire an econ consultant. So you kind of, for those kind of projects, you work hand in hand with the strategy consultants who deal with more firm level issues, and you deal with more market and industry level issues. So it's a really good integrated process, something that currently in India, the strategy consultants have been doing because there are no economists in consulting roles today. So it's a very, very interesting thing. It's mainly micro based, no macro really as much, a lot of metrics because you're building a lot of statistical models. So another interesting project was, for instance, a grocery store has like a large grocery store who has like about 1,000 outlets across London, for instance, that scale of a grocery store. They were like, oh, our costs have really gone up in the last year and we don't know where they've gone up. So you kind of work with the managers of the grocery store and you collect data like what is the different temperatures that their different stores were at, have they changed the amount of stock they keep, are they like wasting a lot of inventory because it's expiring, what are the working hours, how much staff are they employing, how much part-time staff, how much cleaning staff. So you collect like hundreds of variables and then you build a model to analyze where is your cost really increasing. So how do we minimize cost and maximize profit? So that kind of an exercise. And for that, we worked with like the strategy consultants who helped us understand the business, and then we kind of helped them understand the market. So stuff like that.
This is so interesting. Oh my God.
Totally with what's happening and what are the policies, and you have been using the data continuously to remove conclusions or draw conclusions and everything.
Career path wise, what do you think? What are the options that an MSc Economics is going to open for you? Like, will it be more suited for a finance centric role or for a more corporate centric role? Like, what do you think?
I think an MSc sets you to do anything. It can, because you're learning hard skills. You're learning how to analyze something that is applicable to everyone. And you're also learning hard like stats and math skills, which are also useful in any work in any work experience. In fact, today when I was looking at a lot of job descriptions, even for finance and PEVC roles, they prefer someone with a master's in econ as opposed to a master's in finance, because they know that the rigor of that degree is higher. They know the skills that you develop are more in depth. You learn coding in your master's degree, which you don't learn in an MSc finance or an MBA degree, potentially, unless you come from an engineering background. So today, I think coding, data skills, math, stats, something like that helps you work in any sector. Be it in an MNC, even in not in an econ role, even if you're in a manager position, it's very helpful. Of course, finance, econ, research, those go without saying. So I honestly think that you are qualified enough to do anything. The hurdle I see today, especially in the Indian market, is the MBA mind frame. I think that could be the only potential mindset, which also I see changing. The hurdle is to get your CV past HR, because HR is kind of given this mandate of only MBA finance, but the people in the team actually understand the value of an MSc finance over an MBA or an MSc Econ, whatever. So the hurdle is at the HR level, not at the team level. I think teams today really, really respect the skills you bring to them, and they also respect diversity. They today don't want everyone to come from the same background in the team, because that stifles the growth of the team. So I think skills wise, you're good, of course, but the market is still to accept you in a sense, especially in India. I mean, in the UK, especially in MSc Econ, especially from LSE, is like the pinnacle of it. Like, you apply to any job and you get it. But in India today, because of that MBA blockade, it's kind of a little tough, I would say, to break that barrier initially. But once you do, and hopefully once we all do and they see what we can bring to the table, they will be more open to hiring us.
Right, absolutely. Okay, so I think I'm going to go back to your application process at the LSE. How would you can you just run us through the entire process? And you might have applied to some other places also, and why would you choose LSE as the go-to institute for you, or just your application?
Definitely. I think for any degree that you apply to ever, especially outside of India, you have to go to their website, go to that particular degrees prospectus page or whatever, and read the requirements. They have prerequisites which are written out very, very clearly. So they tell you what kind of an entrance exam you need to take. Is it GRE or GMAT? What they prefer? What kind of a grade do you need to get? At least the ballpark figure. What kind of courses should you have done at your undergrad level? Or what kind of experience do they expect? They very often even put the ideal candidate who's usually accepted into a certain program. Of course, the way they structure their websites is different. Certain institutes put more information than others. And for those for which they haven't put up enough information, you can always email the admissions team. They are so responsive over email. I applied to a bunch of places and everyone responded to my queries, however often, however dumb. So don't be hesitant to email them. I would say that is the biggest thing, because if anything is unclear, just email them and they actually get back to you. Maybe not immediately, but in a couple of weeks, definitely they do get back to you. So yeah, the starting point is to first look at the course. If you're still selecting what courses you want to go for, then shortlist courses on the basis of the course content, who teaches it, look at basic rankings of the school on QS, look at the research that school produces, especially for econ, finance, stuff like that. Research is important, not so much for MBA. For MBA, career prospects is more important. So understand what's more important for your degree, what parameters you need to look at. But basic thing is to look at the courses, to look at their duration. Of course, compare costs. They really vary. Tuition costs really vary across institutes. So I also take that into consideration. And then look at the basic QS ranking for that subject or for that program. I would say that was kind of the shortlisting process. For me, I always knew I wanted to go to LSE because it's the best place to do your master's in economics. Most other US institutes directly have a PhD or an MRes program. They don't really have a master's program. So kind of the ranking wise, it's Harvard, MIT, I think Stanford, and then LSE. And Harvard, MIT, Stanford only offer PhD. So look at the QS rankings, look at the research. I was always very interested in the professors that taught my courses. At LSE, they are star researchers. I said they're celebrity economists, and just learning from them was inspiration enough for me. So that's kind of the shortlisting process. After that, of course, the first step is to take your GRE or GMAT, whatever is required. And I would really suggest take it multiple times until you get a good score. They don't care how many times you took it. They care what score you got. So like have a target score and keep taking the exam until you get the target score. Because the thing is, while it's not like a make it, it can be a break it of your application, because they kind of sort on GRE score. Like they have a list of, if they have a list of applicants, they sort on the GRE score, and then below a certain level they don't even look at your application. So if you want them to look at your application, you need to have a good enough GRE score, because it's kind of a qualifier, right? Like any entrance exam is a qualifier to get into like a smaller group of applicants. They say that, oh, you don't need an entrance exam, but you can submit your score. Take the entrance exam. It's always good. It's always good. And it's easy. Like these things are not hard. You can easily do it. After that, of course, is working on your SOP. It's a big part of the application, and they do read it. I know that for a fact. Like they really do spend time with your SOP. I can't be good enough to suggest for other degrees, but for MSc Econ especially, what they want to see is that you have taken your core courses in micro, macro, math, metrics, stats, whether that's in your degree or whether it's via online courses. Second, they want to see that you're like a top student, like in the top 5 or 3 percentile of your class. So write that in like a subtle way in your SOP. And a big part of it after those two things is to see that you are actually interested in the subject. You have been involved in it in your past experiences by being part of Arthanomics, by participating, by reading. Even if you read a book and you want to quote a line from it, go ahead, like an econ book, because that shows them that you're passionate about the subject.
I also wanted to ask you in detail about the importance that academic research plays in our, in our professional career, or just how much value does it add to us, like what we're learning.
To be honest, it depends on what kind of role you apply for. If you apply for like a consulting job, then it doesn't matter as much. They don't really care about your research. They care more about your soft skills. If you're applying for like a generic corporate job, then it may or may not, like it's not really adding much. It's like, okay, it's there. If you apply for a finance or econ job, then of course it helps immensely, because any kind of academic research is like, it shows them that, okay, you are like something apart, like it's something bigger than just the syllabus. You've actually taken time out to do this, and it's always respected. Academic research is always respected. So just be wary, like if someone wants to just do like accounting or do consulting, then it's not as much as helpful. But yeah, for anything else, it would definitely be helpful.
Yeah. So you spoke about profile building and building your resume, or your LinkedIn account. So could you just give us some tips? As a first year student, I don't have an idea like what to do and what not to do. Be it courses, be it learning some new language or adding some new skills. So could you tell what should I do at this stage?
Don't have an end goal. Try to have a little bit of everything. So I wouldn't say do like 10 things, but do 3 things and do them well. So now you are part of Endeavour. Highlight that in your CV, and not just say that, oh, I worked at Endeavour and the editorial board of Endeavour. This is what my position was, and this is what I did. This was my learning. So 3 lines: what the position is, what you did, and what you learned. They really want to see. Like, what's the key takeaway? That, oh, this taught me leadership. It improved my communication skills. Stuff like that is important. So this is kind of your extracurricular bit of it. Then try to have something academic over and above your studies. So be it a research paper, one academic like block into it. And then of course have something like completely unrelated, like a foreign language or a hobby, like be it art, dance, sport, whatever it is, but pursue it. And pursue it in a way that you can talk about it. So I would say to start out, try to have a foot in every door, try to show that you're a diverse person, try to have a balance of things. And then of course, in your 3rd year, for instance, only focus on the academics. So the first 2 years, take out to kind of explore stuff, do different things. And then in the 3rd year, kind of show them that, okay, I have done all this, but also I'm a kick-ass student and I'm great at academics, because that's what matters at the end of it. So that would be like the ideal profile building, at least in my knowledge.
If we want to pursue our post-grad or just in the undergrad as well, what subject should we choose along with economics, so that's a good complement to it? So I am basically a political science economics student and not a math eco student, but there are a lot of people who want to explore more opportunities, who want to explore more subjects and the interlink between them. So do you have anything to say about that?
I mean, political science is a great combination to go with econ. It's very good for policy making. And if that's your combination, then you don't even have to go for a master's in econ. You could go for an MPA program, which is a public administration program. You could go for any other social science program. There are so many like permutation combinations. You could go for a developmental econ program if that's something you're interested in. So yeah, political science combination, international relations, finance, management, all these go hand in hand. Otherwise, in today's day and age, I would actually say a lot of tech actually goes hand in hand with econ. I would really suggest anyone who is looking to study further to do math. In any shape or form. Like, I don't care how you consume your math. Like, pick up a textbook and read it and do its exercises, do an online course, like join math tuitions, even if you don't have the subject. But I really think, in my understanding, especially for finance, eco, political science, these domains for further studies get pretty technical, and it's good to be comfortable in math. You don't have to be good at it. You do not have to be good at it. You just have to be comfortable with it. You have to know what's out there. That's all.
How did you manage your social life? How were the people over there? How was the experience meeting people from different countries and gelling up with them and getting to know them?
Definitely. I think so if you study, for instance, from 8 in the morning to 7 in the evening, you have the evening free for you. So I would make it a point to kind of give my health precedence for 3 days a week, and the other like 4 days in the week I would go out with my friends. Be it like, and the thing is that if you're in a city, then it's very lively. Like in the night, it's really, really lively. So try to have any sort of like a commitment that, okay, every Friday night we go out, so we go out, like come what may. Even if we have an assignment due on Monday, even if we have an exam, go for dinner on Friday. Nothing too complex, but we go grab a bite, we have fun, we chat, and then we you also need that kind of rejuvenation.
Yeah.
So that was one thing. I would otherwise, because you're in a new city, you also want to explore. I would kind of take half a day off on either Saturday or Sunday to go out and explore different parts of the city. Even if I have friends, I would many times just go alone. And if you have company, then it's great. So it's kind of a balancing act. And of course, you can't be productive every weekend. Like some weekends, you're just exhausted. I have spent an entire Sunday in bed. That like you get so tired some weeks that it's fine. Like you have to give yourself time. But I think on average, you pretty much work 6.5 days a week, and you take half a day off. You take evenings off, and I think that is enough.
So I think lastly, any specific learnings or messages that you would want to give the students or the viewers watching this who are going through their own, of course, academic and professional journeys? Like anything you want to say to them?
Yeah, a few things. Firstly, I know for a lot of people, going abroad is difficult for a host of reasons. Maybe their parents are not comfortable, maybe financially it's difficult, which is fine, but study more. Even if you study in our country, there are good institutes. Delhi School of Economics has an amazing master's program. There is NMIMS today is doing very well in econ. So my one advice would be to anyone to continue studying. I mean, at whatever cost, within whatever constraints you have, because you really grow as a person as you pursue higher studies. It's really important, and it's very often overlooked or undertaken. That would be my first point of view. First point. Second point is, don't be afraid of something that's difficult. I think that was my biggest learning from LSE. Like, I have always been very comfortable with my studies, always been very good. I've always found it very easy to study. And after going there, I realized my entire study method had to change. Like, it took me a year to understand that the way I study is incorrect for this system, and I have to change the way I study. I have to adapt myself. And I am very honestly, I am not the smartest person, but you just have to put in the hours, which is why I know that if I can do it, anyone can do it. You literally just have to stick with it. Like, don't be afraid. Don't undermine yourself. If something hard is thrown at you, take it up. Like, I know so many people who like were terrible at math, but stuck with it for long enough to be comfortable with it. So anything that's difficult, don't give up. Just stick with it. You can do it. Anyone can do it with the right amount of effort. Just don't slack on the amount of effort you put into anything. That would be my only advice.
Thanks a lot for joining us over here from
Thank you for
Arthanomics
having
and
me.